Good evening, everyone. I am Councillor Laura Binks, Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council. I would like to welcome you all to this ordinary council meeting of 15th of November 2022. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the places we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respects to elders past, present and future. Today we're meeting on the lands of the Taungurung people of the Eastern Kulin Nations, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. We welcome the people in our public gallery and also those joining us online through our live stream via our website. This meeting is being held in accordance with Strathbogie Shire's governance rules. If we have technical difficulties during today's meeting, which means we are unable to stream the proceedings to the public, we will continue with the meeting given the public gallery is open. Voting by councillors at tonight's meeting will be held by a show of hands. If a councillor or an officer has a conflict of interest in a matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting and no discussion on the matter will commence until we are sure that they have done so. The person will then be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote concluded. We have a number of community members who have registered to speak to items on the agenda this evening. When I call on you to speak, can you please come forward and sit at the table to make your submission? You will need to turn on your microphone. When you do so, you'll have 5 minutes to make your presentation and a bell will sound at the 4-minute mark so that you know you have 1 minute to focus on those last few points you wish to make. Councillors can ask questions of clarification but cannot enter into any debate. I wish to remind all those in the gallery that under Governance Rule 78.2, any member of the public addressing council must extend due courtesy and respect to council and to those in the gallery, and they must not disrupt the meeting. Theo Solomon, are there any apologies for tonight's meeting?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. Yes, there is an apology from Councillor Paul Murray. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. Councillors and officers, are there any disclosures of conflicts of interest under Rule 94 of our Governance Rules, Division 2 of the Local Government Act 2020? No? Okay, councillors, the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 18th of October and the annual statutory meeting and extraordinary meeting held on the 8th of November 2022 require confirmation. Councillors, can I have a motion, please? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Can I please move the motion that the minutes from the previous meetings be adopted?
Thank you, Councillor Burke. And Councillor Rayburn seconding. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Does any councillor wish to speak to the motion? No. Okay. Councillors, can I see show of hands? All those in favour, please. And that is unanimous, and I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. CEO Solomon, do we have any petitions to be tabled this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. No, there are no petitions for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. Councillors, would any of you like to make a report to the meeting this evening? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, all anyone can talk about down our end of town is the floods and what's occurred from that, and I'm sure it's the same across the Shire and across the country, really. But there is a silver lining to the adversity. It's been great to see the community come together, community spirit, and I'm sure it's the same across the whole Shire and the whole of the state. But they've really got together, and it's been very heartening to see. So just like to mention that and thank those who have helped in any way with other people's troubles, and it's been nice to see.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would any other councillor like to make a yes, Councillor Dickinson?
Don't want to steal your thunder. I'd like to acknowledge the Nagambie Little Athletics Club that just started up a couple of weeks ago through the power of parents and citizens. I went along and had a bit of a bo peep, and was terrific. The kids were having a great time, and so were the parents. So, as an old parent involved in athletics myself, I remember it well up in Darwin days. The other thing I'd like to mention is the Remembrance Day ceremonies. It was really good to see how the community respond to our past soldiers, people who unfortunately gave their lives in the number of wars that we've experienced since the year dot just about. So to remember those people, and also to have an avenue of honour opened the day before by you, Mayor, was really, really fitting. And so that's what all I've got to say about Nagambie. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would any other councillor like to say anything? Yes, Councillor Hourigan.
Thanks, Mayor Binks. So it's been a month, obviously, since our last meeting, and whilst we've been navigating floods, etc., it was really good. Euroa had a Friday night activation for the music festival down the main street, which just gave us a bit, some normality around, and they did a fantastic job down there. And a big thanks to council officers for the hard work they went to assist the music festival into still being able to go ahead in Euroa. And I can only imagine what sort of work you would have had to have gone through to be able to move it from one venue to another in such a short period of time. But it really did bring that mood about for the locals whilst we're still obviously in recovery, and some towns are still affected by floods, and especially the rain that we've just had over the last week. I attended Remembrance Day in Euroa on Friday, and that was a really well event with some really great guest speakers there. It was really nice to have that, and it didn't rain while we were there, so that was even better. And I did want to alert everyone that we've got the Agricultural Flood Recovery Information session that's being held on the 18th of November. And this is really important because on a personal level, trying to apply for any support services has been quite difficult for myself. So I can just imagine what other people are going through. So you'll have some specialists available. It is at the Euroa Showgrounds meeting room. And it's on Friday the 18th of November between 12 and 2 o'clock with some light lunch provided, which is really good. And we've got some presenters: Agriculture Victoria, GBCMA, Landcare, AgBiz, Assist, local industry providers, the list goes on. So please, if you need help, I definitely suggest that you attend that. And if it's okay with you, I just also wanted to talk about or just to alert that I've heard concerns from our community, Shire-wide, regarding the floods and in particular the river systems with it. And so I want to assure the community that I've heard their concerns. I've spoken with council officers, and I have been advised that the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority, big word, who is responsible for these waterways, is undertaking an assessment of the impacts from the October flood for our river and creek systems. I just want to assure the people that are coming to me with their concerns that I am maintaining and watching this to ensure that their findings address the concerns that everyone's talking about. So obviously this is not going to happen overnight. This is a study. It will take time, but I'm all over it. Please continue to raise any concerns that you have with me. I am documenting them, and I am keeping them to see, if we need to do anything further. Making sure that the community is heard is such a big passion of mine. So I really encourage you to reach out and contact me. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Would any other councillor like to say anything? Nope. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
One more thing. Sorry, I forgot. November is the month of men's health.
Yes.
Hence the Mo's. Check out Councillor Andrews. He's winning so far. But yeah, it is Men's Health Month. Thank you.
Yes, great. Thanks for that reminder, Councillor Dickinson. And I have noticed your moustache is growing by the week. So I'd just like to say I'm delighted to announce that Council has secured a funding commitment of $241,000 for the Bell Madam Hill mountain bike riding feasibility study, which is part of our recent advocacy campaign. And we received this from the Victorian Government, and we will be contributing a further council's contribution, together with council's contribution, and a further 10,000 from Euroa Rotary Club, which is really greatly appreciated. Well done to all the stakeholders and the members of this working group and each of the officers and councillor who has contributed to this project milestone. We look forward to its outcome in the new year. Another big win for our community is that the Township of Euroa is the winner of the Keeping Australia Beautiful Victoria Tidy Town Award for 2022. Beating two other finalists to the top, it was the Premier's Regional Recognition Award for the Euroa Arboretum Landscape Restoration Works, the pop-up spaces in Binney Street, the Euroa Energy Initiative, which now provides clean, affordable power for traders and residents in Binney Street. The Tidy Town Award will be presented on Wednesday, the 23rd of November 2022 at 10 a.m. at the Euroa Arboretum, and everyone is welcome to attend and can register on Eventbrite. And we'll be putting out some media about that shortly. Over the past few weeks, we have continued to experience high volumes of rainfall, causing flash flooding across the Shire, creating further damage to roads, public infrastructure, businesses and private property. As a result, I've written to the federal representatives, Helen Haynes MP and Sam Burrell MP, and state representatives Jacqueline Symes, Brad Batten, Melissa Horn, Tanya Maxwell, Wendy Lovell and Steph Ryan, with thanks for their support in attending and acknowledging our plight and asking for adequate ongoing funding to support from state and federal government to repair and maintain our roads and infrastructure network. Currently, the Victorian government is in caretaker mode, so we shall see and we'll wait the outcome of the election on Saturday, the 26th of November, when all those 18 and over go to the polls to cast our votes. And I commend community efforts to unite and support one another through these challenging times, to the federal government, Victorian government, the SES, Victoria Police and the CFA for their ongoing support and assistance. I'd further like to acknowledge all council staff who has visited affected residents and businesses to offer and provide support services both directly and through partner agencies. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our outgoing member for Euroa, Steph Ryan, who announced she would not seek re-election in July. Steph has served Strathbogie Shire and its community for 8 years, and we wish her all the best with her future endeavours. I wish each candidate for the Euroa and Northern Victoria in the lower and upper houses all the best for their campaigns for a seat in the 60th Parliament of Victoria, and commend anyone who puts their hands up to represent the community at every level. CEO Solomon, are there questions from the public for this evening?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, yes, there is a question for this evening. We have a question from David Willis of Avenel. And David, would you like to come forward and ask your question, please? You might just need to turn on your microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, to councillors and staff for the opportunity to ask this question of you. I wrote to each of the councillors about this issue, so it will be no surprise, but a request by petition to fly a rainbow flag to recognise International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Transphobia and Intersexism was rejected by you at your last council meeting on the 18th of October. And at that meeting, council spoke on behalf of your LGBTIQ community, but didn't listen to us. So my question then is of you, 72 Victorian councils have agreed to fly a rainbow flag for Ida Hobbit Day in 2023. All of the neighbouring shires around us are included in that. We're the centre that has said no. Why won't Strathbogie Shire fly a rainbow flag for Ida Hobbit Day?
Thank you, David. And in response to your question, we acknowledge that members of the community wish for council to do more, and so we will prepare a report for council to consider in the near future regarding the flying of the rainbow flag on the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Intersexism and Transphobia, or as its acronym is called, Ida Hobbit Day, on the 17th of May. So thank you.
Okay, councillors, we now move to our agenda and we're on page 1 of our agenda, item 9.1.1, planning permit application P2021-052, use of land for a store, earth moving equipment on site and cars within existing shedding, Taylor Drive, Mypole. Manager Aitken, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. As identified, planning application P2021-052 is for the use of the land for a store in the farming zone at Lot 29, Taylor Drive, Meepole. The application includes 2 components. The first is the storage of personal car collection and memorabilia within an existing shed on the land. The second being the storage of earth-moving equipment externally on the site. The site has an area of approximately 3.34 hectares and contains a number of outbuildings. The land is identified in Area 5 of the Rural Residential Strategy 2004 as an area primarily suitable for rural living. The site is located approximately 9 kilometres northwest of the Euroa Township. It is accessible via an unsealed road and set amongst existing rural residential properties. The application was advertised to surrounding landowners. 6 objections were received. The objectors' concerns related mostly to potential amenity impacts such as traffic, pollution, dust, noise and visual impacts, and the potential for impact on the natural environment such as vegetation and discharge into natural depressions. The application has been assessed by officers who believe the storage of earth-moving equipment on the land is not in keeping with the rural residential character of the area and is recommended that Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a planning permit. The recommendation is on page 1 for Council's consideration.
Thank you, Manager Atkins. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification for the officer regarding this item? Not at this stage. Okay. Councillor, we have several parties wishing to speak to this item. Our first submission for tonight is Martin Hank. Martin, welcome. Can you please come forward? Thank you. You've got 5 minutes to make your presentation.
All right, thank you. I must say that I'm a bit dyslexic, but that doesn't hurt my speech. I've also suffered from epilepsy since the age of 27. I've lived in Euroa now since 1986, so there we go. That's about 35 years. Yeah. So therefore, I've grown up in the area. My epilepsy was controlled in 2007. Before that, I was refined to a push bike in the whole of Euroa for 17 odd years. In that time that I've been here, I took up an occupation for myself of returning boomerangs called Youth Thrower Boomerang, which I've done and still continue today. So what happened is once my epilepsy got controlled, I looked for somewhere where I could get away from the hustle and bustle and also the noise and so forth of being in suburbia type area, and I chose Mypole. Where I am in a catchment zone, there's a lot of trees and so forth, the wildlife, the exotic birds that are there, and some of them I've never seen before, but of course it's a spot for them, being up in the Strathbogies and so forth, for them to come down. There's feeding area because of the natural catchment. And also I must just throw in that most of the dams there actually have freshwater mussels in. You don't see that in many country dams. The noise is one thing. Because of my epilepsy being controlled, the drug means I have to have more sleep than normal. I usually have to have another sleep around between 12 and 2 o'clock. I don't seem to be more active than about 6 hours before I need another sleep. The noise, which is a trouble, is that it's only 50 metres to where this truck drives in and out from my bedroom. Because it's a tip truck type thing, it has to have special air brakes, which is as loud as semi-trailers. A quick example of that is that sometimes when farmers sow seeds, they put a big banger out in the middle of their field to stop the birds from eating the seeds. Well, if this truck was there and pressed its brakes, it would do exactly the same thing. So that gives you an idea of how noisy it is. The dust, well, it's ordinary people go to work and by 8 o'clock they've already left and driven up the road because I understand there was going to be a dust there. But of course then they don't come home until 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So you expect not a lot of traffic to be going up and down a road which isn't a through road, it's actually a no-through road, so therefore cars don't come through there unless they actually live there. You can actually put the washing out on after doing it at 8 o'clock, and with the truck and the workers coming up and down the road, you take your washing off the line at 4 o'clock and it's actually dirtier than what it was when you washed it and put it out there because of what the truck does and of course the workers. Safety, we have to walk up the road to check our mailboxes. We can drive, but of course most of us like, because of the country area, to walk up there, also to put our rubbish bins out. With the big truck, we don't have footpaths, so we're sharing the road with the vehicles. The truck seems to go past at erratical speeds and is a bit of a scary thing when it happens. The environment, well, of course, I have seen, I believe the Mayor and a number of others on WIN TV saying how we plan on looking after the environment. Well, this is something which is environmental. I actually got a permit out at Lydiards Road from the council to be able to sell, demonstrate and give lessons with my boomerangs. They did say that I could bring small buses, which are about 3 to 4 tonne with those 10 or 12 people on it, but in no way on the road could I bring coaches which have 40 odd people. And that's simply to explain that even though it's the same width and same condition as our road out there, that the roads aren't made for these big vehicles. To deliver or something for a one-off in and out, fair enough, but to be used for heavy vehicles is definitely a no. So the only other thing I can say is that the water that we have had has actually broken over where it's meant to go with the easement and flooded over the road, washing part of the road away. If the easement seems to be dammed up or blocked somewhere, I believe the council should check this out, because if the water went the way it was meant to go, this would not occur.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Your time's finished. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for Martin? No? Okay, in that case, Martin, you may return to your seat. You can leave the microphone on because, that's okay. That's fine. That's fine. So our next speaker is Caroline Heaney. Caroline, welcome. Come forward and you can turn on the microphone. You also have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. My family has been in Euroa for about 100 years. Wilkinson Lane is my great uncle and auntie. In 2009, my husband and I, sorry, I'm a classroom teacher, my voice is going. In 2009, my husband and I purchased MyPol because I was raised in the country and I wanted my own children to experience country life. So where our property is, we share, if you're facing the property, we share the left side. And we have a 2-bedroom house, which is where the current buildings are at the moment. So the applicant at the moment has been operating for over 12 months, an earth moving business. We do live in Melbourne most of the week. Aaron, my husband, is an electrician. He has clients in Shepparton, so he does stay there during the week as well. Our main objection, our main reasons for our objection is noise. It's very, very noisy with the trucks coming and going. And this happens on Saturdays and some Sundays as well. So you constantly hear that beep, beep, beep. So with teaching all week, little noises like that, it's not pleasant. In our dam, we have put in 100 natural fish. So since 2009, all we've done is benefit the area. My husband, Aaron, suffers from asthma, and so does one of our small children. Aaron's a marathon runner and runs around, but with all that dust around, my children have had a coughing fit over the last year. If the application was to be permitted, I believe it would hinder my family greatly. We have 2 children, both in primary school. Jacob, my son, he enjoys running as well. So the noise, the dust, and all the natural bird life that are there at the moment would be greatly affected. I do have some things from the planning scheme that I've just highlighted. One is to protect and conserve environmentally sensitive areas. It's, friends overseas don't believe me that kangaroos do literally jump past us. And this is what I mean. All of this would change greatly if this application was to go ahead. At the moment, ours is lot 30, so number 43. It is flooded at the moment. Aaron came up on the weekend because it's report writing time for me and took the kids up. He wasn't able to mow the lawns because it's flooded. We don't know if it's the applicant who's caused it, but the easement that releases the water in the area, some neighbour has, they're blocked. So if that could be looked at, that would be good, because currently we can't even get on our property at the moment due to the floods. The air pollution with the large trucks coming in and out, it has changed. And as I said, we've had the property since 2009. So we come up minimum once a fortnight just for that relaxation, country living, which I enjoyed in the 1980s and 1990s. So my husband and I, we strongly object to it.
Thank you, Carolyn. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for Carolyn? No? Okay, if you would like to return. So our next submission is from Anne Donnelly, who is unable to attend in person this evening, but wanted her submission to be read out on her behalf. Shall I read that, CEO Solomon? Or yep, okay, cool. So this is Anne Donnelly has written, I have been informed by your planning department that the permit for 29 Taylor Drive has been resubmitted, even though no obvious attempt to halt the activity has taken place. My original objections still stand, and as the situation has deteriorated even further, I would like to make it known of further objections. I understand you have allocated me only 4 minutes, although it's actually 5, to make my public objections. So here they are in point form. 1, noise pollution from the truck and continual up and down travel on the street is annoying and is affecting the beautiful fauna and tranquility we have out here. 2, increased amount of roadkill of fauna. 3, in summer, clouds of dust raised and drifting everywhere. 4, in winter, massive deterioration of the road with dangerous potholes and the risk of vehicles aquaplaning off the road into the side ditches is heightened. 5, disruption and diminishing amounts of bird life, kangaroos, including an albino, wombats, owls and other species. 6, classification of area, according to my rates notice, is residential, not light industrial. Thank you for taking the time to read and consider my letter. As being the sole carer for my husband who has terminal cancer, it precludes me from attending tonight's meetings. Yours sincerely, Anne Donnelly. So our next speaker on this item is the owner, Greg McIntosh. Greg? Is Greg
extends his apologies. He's not in the right mind to be here tonight.
Okay, so Greg's not joining us this evening. Thank you. So our next speaker is applicant Rob McCulloch. Okay, welcome, Rob. Can you take your seat, and you have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
The application was made nearly 2 years ago-ish. none of any of the objections have come to fruition in that time. It was a temporary stopgap to be working from there while other matters were attended to. It's come to my attention that the blockage and the flooding on the road was caused by one of the other residents who shall remain nameless. But the destruction of the road hasn't happened. My coming and going from that property as a road once a day, twice a day. There's no roadkill. There is no clouds of dust or erratic driving up the driveway. And as I now lease the property, my coming and going from that property to do any sort of works, maintenance to the property, looking after livestock that are there, or the infrastructure that is there, I'm led to believe that there is no reason for an application to be put forward for the storage when there is a lease in play. Would this be correct?
I would need to refer that to our planning officers to get clarification on that, Rob.
Thank you, Mayor. Planning permit approval would be required to use the land for a store in the farming zone. And there's no dwelling currently on the land either, so, yep.
Okay.
The coming and going from the property to look after it is still on the cards. So, on that, I'll rescind the application, continue to use it for the farming purpose it is useful for, and leave you with a copy of the lease. I'm out. It's gone on for too long. People.
We don't have an option to ask questions of clarification to Rob. Councillors, we still need to have a decision on this motion. Despite Rob saying he is rescinding the application, we still need to make a decision on the application as it is in our agenda tonight. So, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysberg.
I would like to move the recommendation by the officers on page 1 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Andrews. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Haysberg?
Oh, well, I'd just like to thank the objectors for coming to speak tonight. I mean, clearly the use of the store for the large machinery isn't compatible with the surrounding use because, yes, it is a rural living zone that you're living in. Yet there's issues for the soil, the waterways, human health, the amenity, the increased risk of bushfire, contamination of floodwater, noise, dust, and that's all been spoken about tonight. So it's a shame that the applicant didn't actually, or the owner didn't separate the application for the car store as a separate application to the storage of the heavy machinery. But I guess that can still happen in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I know our planning department have done a lot of work on this particular application and have offered some alternatives, and they were rejected apparently. So anyway, I support our planners and I think they've done a good job on this particular item.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay. Councillors, if there's no further councillors wishing to speak to the motion, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. I'd like to invite our submitters, if they would like to, they may leave the gallery, or you are most welcome to stay and watch the rest of tonight's proceedings. It's up to you. So we now move to item 9.1.2, Part 1, C52 STRB, which is shorthand for Strathbogie, I discovered. flood mapping amendment. Manager Aitken, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. The C52 Strathbogie Planning Scheme Amendment aims to implement updated flood mapping for the Euroa and Violet Town townships into the Strathbogie Planning Scheme. The flood mapping is based on the modelling prepared as part of the Euroa Post-Flood Mapping and Intelligent Project 2015 and the Violet Town Flood Study 2007. Both studies were prepared based on consultation with the relevant communities at the time. The updated flood mapping is already utilised by the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority in providing flood advice on new land use and development proposals, and it is therefore important that this mapping is incorporated into the scheme to provide certainty to landowners and developers. The purpose of this report is to seek council approval to prepare and exhibit the planning scheme amendment for the updated flood mapping for Euroa and Violet Town. Importantly, this report does not seek to implement any flood mitigation works identified in any of the previous flood studies. The updated flood mapping reflects the current on-ground scenarios for both townships. Updated flood mapping has also been prepared for the Nagambie Township by the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority. The updated mapping has not been through a community consultation process, and officers believe this should occur prior to the amendment process to incorporate the updated flood mapping for Nagambie into the planning scheme. So officers say that that should be subject to a future amendment once community consultation has been undertaken. The recommendation is on page 10 for council's consideration.
Thank you, Manager Aitken. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for Manager Aitken? Councillor Haysbert.
Thanks, Manager Aitken. So how long does this process generally take?
We're hopeful 12 to 18 months at the back end. It really will depend on whether or not there's any submissions to the amendment and whether there's a need for a planning panel.
Okay. And is this, I guess, one of the questions from the community mainly, is this likely to affect insurance premiums and the ability for people to actually obtain
Generally, no. Insurance providers have their own set of criteria, often individual ones, depending on the insurance provider that they measure the flood risk. Part of that is the Australian Flood Intelligence Portal. They also look at things like location, type of housing, previous flood events, additional mapping that isn't incorporated into the planning scheme. So generally, no.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that.
Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Rayburn.
Yes, Manager, I was just inquiring, why has it taken Violet Town since 2007 to get to this stage at the moment, which is basically 15 years?
Yeah, time and resources is the short answer, but in reality we've only received the associated mapping that comes from the report from the Goulburn Broken Catchment Management Authority in the last 12 to 18 months. So it's really been about working through the strategic planning work program, and we're ready to go now. So.
Thank you, Manager Aitken. Any further questions, clarification regarding this one? No? Okay, councillors, may I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysbert.
Could I please move the recommendation on page 10 of the agenda?
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hourigan. Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Haysbert?
Just, I guess, thank the officers, because this is obviously really important work that needs to be done to update our flood modelling, especially after recent flooding. It shows the importance that, you know, we could be at risk if we don't have accurate flood modelling in our planning scheme, and it's well overdue. And yes, I'd like to commend this motion to councillors tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Hourigan, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against, and I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to item 9.1.3, page 19, planning applications received and determined from the 1st to the 30th of October 2022. Manager Aitken, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks, for referring us to page 19 of the agenda, where it's noted there were 14 new planning applications received and 15 planning permit applications decided upon during the reporting period, being the 1st to the 31st of October 2022. A mixture of applications were received during the reporting period, including a number of applications for dwellings and residential subdivisions. As stated, the recommendation is on page 19 for Council's consideration.
Thank you, Manager Aitken. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for Manager Aitken? No. Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Dickinson.
I'd like to move the motion as stated on page 19.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Dickinson? Councillor Rayburn? Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Councillors, I will put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. So on to page 21 of the agenda, item 9.2.1, application for sponsorship, Ruffy Tablelands Community Christmas Party, 3rd of December 2022. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Council has received an application from the Ruffy Community Centre Incorporated to support a community Christmas party to be held on the 3rd of December this year. The request is for cash contribution of $1,014 and that is to assist with the cost of printing, activities and games, advertising and catering for this free community event. Following the assessment process, there is a recommendation on page 21 of the agenda for Council's consideration to approve the sponsorship request. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification of the officer? No. Okay, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the recommendation on page 21 of the agenda be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Mayor. Just it's important we support our community right throughout, so I'm glad to see this going through. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Hayes-Burke.
I just want to say I hope this is a great event. I know that the Ruffy Tablelands Community Centre group or committee has put in a lot of work to get this up and running, and it's a great event for kids and all ages, and I hear that Santa will be there, so yeah, you should all get along and support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour and against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. And now move to page 26 of the agenda, item 9.2.2, Christmas Decorations Grant 2022, additional recipients. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. At the September Council meeting, Council resolved to approve funding for 4 Christmas decorations projects, those being in Avenel, Euroa, Longwood and Nagambie, and also for officers to work with Violet Town and Euroa to refine their applications in line with the funding guidelines and resubmit to Council for consideration. As such, we received 2 submissions from both Euroa and Violet Town for this program. Following the assessment process, it is recommended that both Euroa and Violet Town are supported in their applications. Furthermore, there was a budget allocation of $30,000 in this year's 22-23 budget for a Christmas decorations program. Should these 2 grant submissions be supported this evening, a total amount of $24,269 would have been allocated to the program. It is proposed that the remaining amount of $5,731 be allocated to the sponsorship program, given the demand that we have seen for the program so far this financial year. There is a recommendation commencing on page 26 of the agenda. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for the officer? No. Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hourigan.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. I'd like to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation that's in page 26 and continues over to page 27 of our agenda tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Hourigan?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Binks. This is a great outcome for our very first Christmas decorations grant funding. And as Director Tingay said, 30,000 was allocated and we're near 25,000, which means our communities are very excited to be celebrating Christmas in each of their townships. So I think this is a really good grant to bring about the holiday season, especially after such tragedy, which we were saying was COVID, but now floods. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak to the motion?
It's good to share the Christmas cheer.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to page 32 of the agenda, item 9.2.3, 2022 to 2023 Council Christmas New Year closures. CEO Salomon, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, while we seem to be on the Christmas theme, this one with a slightly different focus. Councillors, as you're aware, the offices in Binney Street, Euroa, Nagambie Customer Service Centre, or the Visitor Information Centre, and the Operations Centres at Euroa and Nagambie close over the Christmas New Year period each year, and the length of that closure is really dependent on where Christmas New Year falls. This year, Christmas Day falls on the Sunday, and we're proposing that the office closes from 12 noon on Friday, 23rd of December 2022, and reopens at 8:45 a.m. Tuesday, the 3rd of January 2023. Typically, the offices usually close at 3 p.m. on Christmas Eve. However, in recognition and appreciation of the flexibility, the agility, and the commitment of staff in ensuring continuity of service provision to our community in what has been challenging times during the recent flood events, our officers have worked long hours over time to respond to these floods. It's proposed that we close the offices at 12 noon this year. The length of closure remains consistent with previous years and is widely accepted by the community. I just would like to highlight councillors and to the community that this closure relates to council administration, and many of council services will continue during this time. Directors and executive managers will make appropriate staffing arrangements to ensure that ranger, water patrols for Lake Nagambie, after hours and emergency response services and essential services and programs required to operate during this period, including our transfer stations, will continue to do so without interruption. Council, there is a recommendation on page 32 of tonight's agenda for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Salomon. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification for the CEO regarding this item? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Dickinson.
I'd like to move the motion as stated on page 32.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to acknowledge what the CEO said about the contribution of staff, particularly over recent weeks, and knocking off a few hours earlier on Christmas Eve, near enough to Christmas Eve, is small recognition. So great stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour? Thank you. And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to page 34 of the agenda, item 9.2.4, independent review of Inland Rail, Strathbogie Shire Council submission. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. The Australian Government has commissioned an independent review of the Inland Rail program. The Commonwealth Government's Inland Rail project is led by the Australian Rail Track Corporation with a clear aim of getting more freight on rail. Specifically for Strathbogie Shire, the major piece of work is a new infrastructure solution in Euroa to allow double-stack trains to be able to double-stack trains with carriages, to be able to continue up the line. The review will investigate the management and delivery of the Inland Rail program. Submissions from interested parties closed on Friday, the 11th of November. The independent review is expected to be completed by early 2023, with the findings provided to the Australian Government for consideration. As such, Strathbogie has submitted a submission to this independent review. There is a recommendation on page 34 of the agenda for Council to note that in that submission to the review. Thank you, Mayor Binks.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for Director Tingay regarding this item? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hesberg.
Can I please move the recommendation on page 34 of the agenda?
Thank you, Councillor Hesberg. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Hesberg?
Just thank officers for taking the initiative to submit to this inquiry, because I don't think they had much notice, and there was a quick turnaround, and I fully appreciate what's written in the submission, especially around the community not feeling like they had a say in the project. And that was really one of the key concerns that we kept hearing, and what we've always said is really important to ARTC, that they listen to the community. So hopefully that message does get across in this, and I'm sure that lots of other communities will be reporting the same thing. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Councillor Hesberg. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'll just support Councillor Haysberg's comments, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I'll put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? And declare that carried. Now moving on to page 38 of our agenda, item 9.3.1, tender for contract number 2022-2023-20, landscape of Rouvale Estate Open Space. Director Adamek, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Strathbogie Shire Council is constructing a new open space play area at the Rouvale Estate. The site was set aside during the Rouvale development in 2019. The construction of an open space will provide the community with a play space that will encourage social interaction and promote health and well-being. Landscape services were sought through a tender process to design and construct the area, creating a fit-for-purpose community space. Officers recommend that the council award the tender of the contract 22-23-20 landscape of Rouvale Estate Open Space to Keela Lawn Garden for a total of $113,718 inclusive GST. This will complete the construction of playground at the Rouvale Open Space, and the successful tender will take design and construct element to the playground into consideration. There is a recommendation there for your consideration.
Thank you.
Page 38.
Thank you, Director Adamek. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification for the officer regarding this item? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the recommendation on page 38 of the agenda be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Mayor. It's it's a new part of town, and there's a lot of families and people with young and middle-aged children down there, and I think it'll be a well-utilised area.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to speak?
I think Councillor Andrews said it all.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Haysbert?
Yeah, thanks. It's a decent sized space, so that's good to see in this new housing estate. I just want to note that sadly there were no contributions from the developer to this open space. It was approved in 2018, but since then we do have better practices in place, and developers are required to contribute to open spaces of this nature. And so I note the total cost will be $228,000 for the play equipment and the landscaping.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? And against? And declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 9.3.2, contracts and works awarded under delegation. Director Bray, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, in front of you, you have a report outlining the contracts that have been awarded by the CEO, directors and managers. There's a few projects that further the delivery of the council plan and also the 2022-23 budget, including the procurement of an art box, a container for the art box initiative. We've got a series of footpaths that have been awarded to contract. We have the playground equipment for the item that we've just talked about in terms of that was for the landscaping component. We have already contracted the design and the production of the playground and the play equipment, and that's because there's a long lead time in terms of producing that equipment. And also the playground and open space strategy has been awarded through contract as well. So that's an action that's actually in our council plan for this year too. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification for Director Bray regarding this item? No? Councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysbert.
Can I please move the recommendation on page 43 of the agenda? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to thank Director Bray for the summary. There's some really exciting projects in there, and I note that some of them have come in under budget, which is what we love to see.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak? Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. I now move to page 48 of our agenda and item 9.4.1, financial report to the 30th of September 2022. Director Bray, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, we have the quarterly report that we're required to produce under the Local Government Act, and that includes a number of statements in terms of the operational performance, income statements, balance sheet, cash flow statements. We have a surplus at the moment that's quite significant, and that's just because of timing. So we've got a lot of capital projects that are in play, but obviously the expenditure hasn't occurred at the moment. We have a few variations and a few things to note in the notes that are in the documents and the statements. And again, it's all around timing. So our statutory fees look a little bit down to year to date, but that's because we haven't sent out the animal registrations and also the health permits that are on an annual basis. And so what we'll be doing for the next budget is getting those timings right, so those variations don't look so dramatic. In terms of, we've also got some more capital grants that we hadn't expected. We haven't sold as much equipment, so there's a little bit of a decrease in profit from the sale of equipment, and again, that's just a timing thing. And we have had, again, around timing of paying bills, it's the employee expenses look high. That's just because we've had to pay our income protection premium in this quarter. And so again, in the next budget, we'll actually get that timing correct so that all of that expenditure is in this first quarter. So, councillors, there's a recommendation on page 48 for you to note the financial report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification for the officer? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hourigan.
Thanks, Mayor Binks. I'd like to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation that council note the financial report for the 3 months ended 30th September 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Andrews. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would you like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak? No. Okay. Any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No.
I'll just like to thank Director Bray and her team for putting together this, because it's something that continuously needs to be worked on. And I mean, it's a big requirement from the state government to be constantly producing these reports. And thanks for providing that information for us as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Any further? Councillor like to speak to it? No. Okay, councillors, I should put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against. And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We're now page 51 of the agenda. Item 9.4.2, Audit and Risk Committee Charter, use of exceptional circumstances exemption clause to reappoint 2 independent community members. Director Bray, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, we're in a position at the moment where 2 of our independent Audit and Risk Committee members' terms have now lapsed, and therefore we need to turn our minds to how we fill those vacancies. There's an Audit and Risk Committee charter that's in place that governs the committee and its governance structure. So the committee is comprised by 4 independent members and then 2 councillors plus a councillor substitute as well. So the role of the committee is to obviously provide some independent oversight around our financial management policies, governance structures, and is quite a vital committee that's actually required to be appointed under the Local Government Act. The Charter has a clause 3.2 which talks about using exceptional circumstances to extend the terms of existing committee members if those exceptional circumstances are deemed by council to exist. Given that we have an Audit and Risk Committee meeting in December, and also given the fact that potentially the councillor committee members could change in December at our meeting where we appoint councillors to committees, and also given the fact that we have to tender out for new auditors early next year, it is considered that some of those exceptional circumstances do exist. We also are still working through and transitioning to the new arrangements under the Local Government Act and the Charter, which requires an extensive work plan for this committee. We're still working on the response to COVID and obviously now the floods. So there is a high workload for this committee. The prospect of having potentially 4 new members and new internal auditors within the period of the next 6 or 7 months is quite a significant turnover. The Charter also talks about minimising the turnover of members as well, just to ensure that continuity, given it's quite a growing complexity in terms of the role of the committee. What we're proposing is that one of the members, Mark Freudenstein, is seeking an additional 12 months, and so we would be recruiting for a new independent committee member in 2023. We have then 2 other community independent members that are up, their terms end in 2024, so we would go through another recruitment process then. And then Alistair Purbrick, who is our other independent member whose term has just lapsed, is seeking another 3 years. And so we would recruit for another independent member in 2025. So we get that gradual turnover each year and seeking that expertise that we need. So, councillors, there is a recommendation that starts on page 51
that's in 4 parts that talks about enacting that exceptional circumstances clause in the Audit and Risk Committee Charter to extend the terms of existing members. The second point is to award those additional terms to Mark Freudenstein and Alistair Purbrick, and also note that the recruitment will be undertaken in 2023 for a new independent committee member. And also note that we will be going to consider a report at the February meeting next year outlining the process to tender for new independent internal auditors. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification regarding this item on the agenda? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a question? Can I have a motion, please? And can you state your motion? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the motion or the recommendation on page 51 and 52 of the agenda be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this committee is certainly the most important in the council arena, and it's very important to keep its consistency, and it's the experienced members there that have been mentioned can certainly do that, and so at these times it's important, especially if the auditing team's going to be reconsidered. So I think it's important to put this motion forward.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? Okay, councillors, I should put the motion to vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against? And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to page 57 of the agenda, 9.5.1, the monthly performance report. Director Bray, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, we have quite a significant amount of building activity that's again taken place, over $4 million worth in the last month across the whole Shire. Again, a lot of it is represented by dwellings and residential type development. In terms of planning permit applications, we've again had around $4 million again, so that's around $8 million worth of development that's been approved in the last month. As you can understand, given the flood event happened in October, we have had a significant increase in the amount of calls and contacts from customers throughout the time. We had 187 road matters raised, and a lot of those were probably over in a 24-hour period or a 48-hour period. We've had 68 waste related matters, and some of those would have been calls about delays in waste collection due to the floods. 35 were around trees, but 172 emergency call-outs. So that reflects the significant work that we talked about last month, that particularly the outdoor crew have done, and also our emergency management responders who are also in Director Tingay's team in terms of the recovery response as well. So there's been a significant effort around that flood response, the initial emergency response, and also the recovery, and that work continues. So, councillors, there is a recommendation on page 57 to note the report, but I just wanted to again underline the work that's been undertaken by the outdoor crew, recovery and emergency staff, and also the customer service staff in dealing with all of those inquiries and dealing with people that were under a significant amount of stress and sometimes just wanted to have a talk to someone about their issues and get some reassurance. So I'd like to thank all of the staff for their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification for Director Bray? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is? Councillor Haysbert.
Can I please move recommendation to note the report?
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Haysbert?
Just to thank Director Bray for emphasising the huge workload that officers have undertaken over the last month. And yes, I'd also like to just thank them for their efforts because, yeah, it's been a massive month of responding to floods.
Thank you, Councillor Haysbert. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors, I should put the motion to a vote. Can I see a show of hands? All those in favour, please. And against. And I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. We now move to page 76 of the agenda, item 9.6.1, Pitch My Project, Executive Manager Favalora. May we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Binks. So the Pitch My Project initiative is now in its third year. Since that time, we've funded more than 20 community projects. So it's a great way of ensuring community input into our budget and to making sure that we are funding the projects that matter to our community. So this year, officers have continued to make improvements to the process, and we've developed some draft guidelines which ensures really good governance and strong community input. So the proposed guidelines outline several stages. These are an extended submission or pitch period, a clear assessment process, councillor assessment process, and an equitable community vote. Also proposed is a $300,000 allocation for Pitch My Project as part of the 23-24 budget, with funding of up to $50,000 available to align to each of the 6 strategic focus areas within our council plan. So, councillors, there is a recommendation on page 77 of tonight's agenda for you.
Thank you, Executive Manager Favalora. Councillors, are there any questions or clarification for the officer regarding this item? Yes, Councillor Rayburn.
Yes, Executive Manager, just clarification. People who are applying for this, do they have to be incorporated to apply?
No, I don't believe so, because the projects would be managed by council and delivered by council. So it's any idea, I suppose, that a community has that aligns to our council plan.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Any further questions of clarification? No? Okay, councillors, can I have a motion, please? And can you state what your motion is?
Can I put forward an alternative motion, please?
Certainly.
I'd like to move that council postpones the Pitch My Project initiative for the 23-24 financial year and to allocate the proposed $300,000 in funding to road repairs.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. So do I have a seconder for Councillor Dickinson's alternate motion? Councillor Andrews. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Sorry, just taking down my notes. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Dickinson?
Thank you, Mayor. There's been a lot of talk in recent weeks about how hard hit we have been, and it's all true. We have been hard hit in this shire, as many other shires have also been hard hit. And one of the most needy projects that I see right now is road repairs, potholes. And I think that it's probably time that we tightened our belts a bit and contributed towards the repair of these roads. Now, we were told only a week ago that funding was a real issue as far as having the funds to do all the necessary repairs, and that we would need to be getting additional grants in order to carry out these extra projects on our roads and footpaths. I think that in this time of need, that our community can probably withstand any additional funding under the Pitch My Project, and that they would, I believe, be more than happy to have this $300,000 contributed towards the funding of road repairs. And I think that we as a council have a responsibility to use this money appropriately, and that is fixing the roads or helping to fix the roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Andrews, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Under normal circumstances, I certainly support the Pitch My Projects proposition. So it is positive for the community. However, I think what we've been discussing for the last few weeks, people would certainly understand if we had to defer that for a year so we can deal with what's happened across the Shire and across the and the state, but certainly our Shire. There are nice to haves, which is Pitch My Project, and there are need to haves, which are roads and other maintenance issues. So I would support what Councillor Dixon said and would defer the Pitch My Project proposal for 12 months.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Would any councillor like to speak against the motion? Councillor Rayburn?
Thank you, Mayor. The reason I am against this motion is the fact that this Pitch My Project concept is something which we as a council have control of, understanding of, and have complete assessment of it. By deferring this for another 12 months, we'll still go through this process again in February, April next year, where we asked people to put into the budget, where we will have no control of what they put in or how they put it in. So to me, this is a better way of controlling what submissions have been put forward. And so I'm against the so-called motion being put forward.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Haysberg?
I'd like to support Councillor Rayburn's remarks. This is giving the community a really positive opportunity to have input into the budget, whereas when we get budget bids after we put our budget out for community consultation, we're going to get a negative wrath from the community, whereas here they have a positive opportunity, and it's been really well received by the community. Pitch My Project in the last couple of years. Don't you believe that community building is a key part of the recovery process, and the community having confidence that they are having a real say in the budget? And I just think that this is an opportunity to show the community that we're listening to them. It's $300,000 for the community to really have a say and have confidence in council. So I really hope that we can continue funding this project, because I'm worried that if we don't continue to do it in the next financial year, then it'll just be it won't be brought up again, and we'll lose the momentum and also confidence from the community that we're achieving what they're hoping for.
Thank you, Councillor Haysberg. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Horrigan?
Thanks, Mayor Binks. Could I please ask Director Bray a question regarding that if the Pitch My Project was to go ahead for this period, does that mean that people are not allowed to submit to the budget?
Through you, Mayor, we still need to call for budget submissions, so we still need to publicly advertise the budget. It just means that those submissions and any sort of pitches, if you like, that are done at that time are done at a very late stage when the budget's already been in draft form. And then there's issues around sometimes transparency, in that we're not going back out to the community to say these are the suggestions. So it's a timing thing. So the reason for bringing that process forward was to allow some greater transparency and comment.
Sorry, can I just rephrase that? Does that mean that there is no budget bids should the Pitch My Project go ahead? We cancel budget bids, or you can still partake in a budget bid?
Yes, you can. You can still make a budget submission.
Whether or not this goes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Manager Bray. I have asked council officers when we received this report if this is manageable now. So I know that we had some talks about it, and that was before I think the state government had released that they were providing funding for the flood recovery works, and before we knew what we could or couldn't do. So my personal opinion is that I would like to still see the Pitch My projects go ahead now that I have been assured that it's an achievable program that we can deliver. And I just want to stress that we want to make sure that we do these Pitch My projects, otherwise it is a useless exercise. So I do I can't agree with the current motion that's been tabled. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to exercise your right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've listened to all the points of view here, and whilst I may not necessarily agree with them, particularly in such exceptional circumstances that we are in now, I'd just like to remind everyone it was only a week ago that we were informed in this room that we were going to be struggling for manpower and struggling for funds in order to carry out the required work. Now, if that's the case, then how come a week later we can suddenly afford this money? I just don't get it. So I'm going to push forward on the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. So, councillors, we're now voting on the alternate motion as put forward by Councillor Dickinson that we defer, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to repeat it just so that we know, because we don't have it in front of us in the papers, that we defer the Pitch My project funding for the 2023-2023 financial year, and we divert the $300,000 that was allocated to Pitch My project to the road repairs capital works budget. Is that correct, Councillor Dickinson?
Yeah, it actually says postpone the Pitch My project initiative for the 23-24 financial year, and that the proposed $300,000 in funding goes towards road repairs.
Great, thank you for that clarification. Just wanting to make sure we've got it right. So we are voting on that motion, please. Can I see a show of hands for all those in favour of the alternate motion? And against?
I forget the terminology, but can I call for a division, please?
Yes, Councillor Dickinson, you can. So can I see a show of hands for all those in favour, please? Councillor Andrews, Councillor Dickinson, and against, Councillor Hourigan, Councillor Haysbrook, Councillor Rayburn and Councillor Binks. Okay, councillors. That motion is lost. So can I please have a new motion, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hourigan.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. I would like to slightly amend the current motion. So I would like to remove dot point D. So the recommendation would read as follows: that Council 1 endorses the new Pitch My project guidelines and approach, which includes A, an extended submission period, B, clear assessment process, C, councillor assessment process. 2, endorses the alignment of the Pitch My project submissions to the 6 strategic focus areas within the council plan. And 3, approves the allocation of $300,000 for the Pitch My project initiatives in the 2023-2024 budget.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Do I have a seconder for the motion? No. Okay, so the motion, being that there be no seconder, it is lapsed for a lack of a seconder. Councillors, I still need a motion. Can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is?
Can I please move the motion on page 77 as per the officer's recommendation?
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Sorry, lots of notes I'm making. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rayburn, you are seconding Councillor Hayes-Burke's motion. Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you like to speak to the motion?
I remember when we first started this council, we talked about having some more rigour and having more community input into the budget, and officers came back to us with Pitch My Project as a solution, and it's a transparent way that the community can have genuine input into the budget. Therefore, I very much support this process, and I think it's been refined over the last couple of years, and now we have some clear guidelines that allow council to have some input and also the community to ultimately vote, which I think will be a more equitable process and see projects in, not just necessarily the larger communities, but also allow the small communities and everyone to have a say. So I support the recommendation here.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Rayburn, would you like to speak to the motion?
I just congratulate Councillor Hayes-Burke on putting my words out of her mouth.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Councillor Hourigan.
Thanks, Mayor Binks. I'd like to speak against the motion. The point of Part D, the equitable community vote, we have seen in the past when we've participated in other ideas that someone, if you're part of a cricket group or a footy group and you're putting up a Pitch My Project, well, you can, tell everyone in that group to make sure they get on it and they vote for that. So I don't find it to be equitable process at the moment, the way that it reads. And so therefore, I think it could, greatly affect the Pitch My Project, and someone that's, maybe doesn't have that big group of friends, or maybe that doesn't have that kind of support backing, might put something up that's really good. And then if it doesn't make the mark, we don't get to have a say on it. So I think that, in fact, it's unequitable. And so therefore, I'm against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hourigan. Would anyone else like to speak to the motion? No. Okay, councillors. If there's no one, anyone want to speak against it? No. No. Okay. Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote, and the motion is as written by the officers in the agenda.
Can I just write a reply, please?
Yes, you may, Councillor Hayes-Burke, of course.
I think you need to have more faith in the community than that, because I think if they're genuinely good ideas, the community will get behind and support them. And these ideas, if the community have the right information, they can make the right decisions. So I think we need to have faith in them, and I support it. So
thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke, and sorry I forgot to give you your right of reply. Thank you for alerting me to that. Okay, now I will put the motion to the vote. So councillors, can I see a show of hands for all those in favour for the motion that we have on the table? And against? 3. Okay, councillors, as the vote is tied in accordance with sub-rule 70 of the governance rules, I can use my casting vote and I'll be voting for the motion. So the motion is 4-3 and carried.
We have a division on that, please.
Certainly, Councillor Dickinson. So I'll go for those for the motion. Can I see a show of hands? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Rayburn, Councillor Binks. When do I record my casting vote?
3, Mayor, we can at the end.
Okay, thank you. And against, can I see a show of hands? Councillor Andrews, Councillor Dickinson and Councillor Hourigan, noting that the motion was carried by my casting vote in accordance with sub-rule 70 of the council's governance rules. Okay, thank you. Casting vote. Cool. Okay, councillors. That is the end of the items in the main section of our agenda. We now move on to item 10. CEO Solomon, are there any notices of motion for this evening?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, no, there are no notices of motion for this evening.
And are there any notices of rescission?
No, there are none. Mayor Binks.
Is there any urgent business to consider?
Once again, through you, Mayor, no, there's no urgent business.
And finally, CEO Solomon, is there any confidential business to consider?
Once again, through you, Mayor, there is no confidential business for tonight's agenda.
Thank you, CEO Solomon. So the next monthly meeting of Strathbogie Shire Council is scheduled to be held on Tuesday, December the 13th, 2022 at the Euroa Community Conference Centre. Please note that this is on the second Tuesday of the month, not the usual third Tuesday, due to the fast approaching of Christmas. So we just do a week earlier in December. So that will be Tuesday, the 13th of December, 6 p.m. There being no further business for tonight's meeting, I declare the meeting closed at 7:30 p.m. on the dot. And thank you, everybody, for attending, submitting, watching online, and thank you, councillors and officers, and good night.